Okie dokie, here we are for round number 4. On player 1 side, we have John playing mono black painter. Not the most common color of painter that you see going around. Nowadays, there's probably a tie in popularity between mono red and Rakdos. And then the runner-up is probably mono blue painter. So hopefully we get to see this nice little twist that John has for us today. His opponent is Matt Chow. He has recently started doing some meta reports and a lot of data when it comes to the legacy format. So I'll throw up like a title card to his channel, and I'll probably put a link in the description because he's a Toronto local. He's another up-and-coming content creator, and I just want to support him as much as I can. So link to his channel will be in the description below, and he will be piloting Grixis Delver today. So here we are going to resolve mulligans here. And I think John is on the play. I wasn't really paying attention while I was doing that little introduction here, but from what I remember, and my memory is quite shoddy from 2-3 weeks ago. But yeah, John is on the play. Starts us off with Swamp, gonna evoke a Grief, pitching Orcish Bowmaster. I bet he's regretting his decision now, seeing that Brainstorm. Matt holding his own Orcish Bowmaster, Reanimate, Force of Will, Brainstorm, Fatal Push, Basic Island, and a Scalding Tarn. Assuming that John has some sort of reanimation spell or another follow-up discard spell, you most likely probably want to be taking like a Force of Will. Or if you don't have a follow-up reanimate spell, then you want to take the reanimate because you don't want your opponent reanimating your Grief. Alright, so John ends up taking the Force of Will. There is a reanimate in his hand. Gonna see it come down again. Target the Grief. Matt gonna reveal his hand once again. So there's two avenues that you can take. You can either take the Brainstorm and stop Matt's card selection. I don't think John draws a lot in this deck just because he's mono black, so Orcish Bowmaster isn't really a big deal for him, although it is a way to block the Grief really well. But he opts to take the Fatal Push just because Matt can, turn one Scalding Tarn, crack it, find an Underground Sea, use the Fatal Push, and just blow up John's Grief. I think John wants to kind of keep his aggression here. So Matt is going to start off with Island Ponder, and he's looking at his 3 cards deep in the tank. Alright, going to keep the 3 cards, going to draw off the Ponder and pass back to John. John gonna untap, draw his card for turn. Going to go immediately to combat and swing in for 3, brings Matt down to 17. Alright, in the main phase 2, John's going to drop down Ancient Tomb and just pass it back straight to Matt. Matt going to draw. Plays a Scalding Tarn. Looks like he's setting up for a Brainstorm here that we saw in the opening hand. Just going to pass back. Going to see some action at the end of Matt's turn from John. Going to pay 1 black mana to cycle a Troll of Khazad-dûm. In response, Matt going to Brainstorm. Draws 3 cards. And most likely going to shuffle 2 away with the Scalding Tarn. Probably best. So, if you're wondering why Matt's firing out the Brainstorm here, I think it's because John has already shown that he plays Orcish Bowmaster, and while the shields are down and John doesn't have any black mana open, probably best to fire off the Brainstorm when you can. This is what Bowmaster has kind of done to Legacy as a format is, yes, Brainstorm is still powerful. No, it's not seeing a decline in play because it is still an extremely powerful card. You just have to be much more diligent on when you're casting it. You can't just fire it off whenever you want without thinking anymore. So you must play it in a much more strategic manner, and you have to take into consideration a lot more what your opponent's doing. So Matt's going to fetch an Underground Sea from this Scalding Tarn. Alright, John going to complete the Swamp cycle from the Troll of Khazad-dûm. Going to find another basic Swamp. And then most likely just go back to his turn. All right, John gonna draw. Goes to combat, swings in for 3, brings Matt down to 13. John at 16. There's a Nile Spellbomb in John's hand. Plays a swamp that he found off of the swamp cycle. I think this is a nice time to cast the Nile Spellbomb and just pop it. Matt is showing, like, he has Island Underground Sea on the battlefield, and he has 5 cards in the graveyard, so this does represent a Murktide. Although it's not going to be the maximum size, it is going to be pretty close. So I think cracking the Nile Spellbomb is would be like really smart to do right now. And he is holding it, so down comes a Murktide from Matt. Yeah, he missed the timing on that one. I think he was afraid because we did see the reanimate in Matt's hand. I think we haven't seen a Dragon's Rechanneler, we haven't seen a Delver, so he doesn't really know exactly what deck Matt is on, other than being a blue-black tempo-based list. I mean, it doesn't necessarily need to be tempo, but all he's seen are Force of Will's Fatal Pushes and Brainstorm Ponder. Like, very easily, he could have been... I mean, John did see the reanimate in the opening hand, so it would lead you to believe that it is a tempo-style list. Okay, so Matt's going to try to evoke his own Grief. And in response, John is going to cast an Orcish Bowmaster. In response to the Orcish Bowmaster, it looks like Matt is fetching for a Volcanic Island. So the card that Matt pitched to Grief was Stalactite Stalker. Alright, in response to the Orcish Bowmaster, Matt is going to cast another Brainstorm. This is going to be pretty hard for John to come back from. Other than Snuff Out and Dismember, Mono Black doesn't have a ton of ways to deal with like a Murktide. And even then, Murktide or Dismember might not even deal with the Murktide because it just grows so large. Okay, so gonna resolve the Grief that was on the stack. Gonna take the One Ring out of John's hand. John gonna be handless, and after the Grief, Matt's just gonna pass. John gonna draw for his turn. Go to combat, swing in with the Grief, brings Matt down to 8. Going to tap 4 mana. Wow, top deck's another One Ring. That's pretty good. So now he can start drawing from this One Ring. Surprised he didn't tap it to just draw a card. Matt was completely tapped out, and you know, we've seen that he's playing black, so he could have Orcish Bowmasters of his own. So I think the most underutilized game piece right now is probably the Nile Spellbomb. It's probably worth it at this point to just break it and draw an extra card. If Matt is willing to dump a few more cards into the graveyard and threaten, like, maybe convincingly another Murktide, then you just pop it to get cards out of the graveyard, so it's harder to cast that second Murktide, because dealing with one is going to be hard enough. And Murktide not going to be swinging here because John has protection from everything this turn. Matt plays a Polluted Delta for his turn. And we did see a Wasteland in there as well. John going to draw for his turn. And going to Kolaghan's Command. Okay, so I mean, there's no reason to like destroy the Nile Spellbomb. No reason. You can't destroy the One Ring due to Indestructible, but there's a Thoughtseize. So he's making John discard and then shocking the Orcish Bowmaster for 2. Gonna go into combat, attack with the Grief, bring Matt down to 5. Gonna activate the One Ring. I'm very curious why John didn't activate the One Ring in response to the Kolaghan's Command. It would have given him one more piece of information to make like a card for a card to discard. But I guess top decking it in Urza Saga is not bad either. There's another Brainstorm from Matt. That's a 3rd one. That's why he wanted to deal with the Orcish Bowmasters. And now Matt has John on a 2-turn clock. It's a 7/7 Murktide, John only at 12 life. So if John takes a hit from the Murktide Regent here, oh, it's hard for John to crack the Nile Spellbomb, because if he exiles Matt's graveyard, the current Murktide Regent grows. There's a Wasteland for the Urza Saga. So you see, Matt's patience is really paying off here, because he could have used the Wasteland on the Ancient Tomb last turn, but he chose to play the Polluted Delta instead. And now he gets rewarded by getting John's Urza Saga. Does John have an out here for this Murktide Regent? He's going to draw his card. Going to go to combat, swing in for 4. There's an Orcish Bowmaster of his own. Going to shoot the Orc army, and then he can trade into the Grief if he really wants to. It looks like he is going to double block. Gets rid of all of John's threats. I think he has to activate the One Ring here just to see if he can draw out of this. If he can draw another One Ring, that would give him a little extra time. Looks like he drew a Reanimate and something else. To Reanimate, Karn the Greek Creator, and I think that might be an opposition agent. All of which do not deal with this Murktide. Yeah, so I think the most critical point of the game here was not cracking the Nile Spellbomb when Matt had 5 cards in the graveyard. Like, he just hasn't been able to find any way of dealing with this Murktide Regent. So I think the reason why John didn't crack the Nile Spellbomb is he saw the Reanimate in Matt's hand in the opening turn, but he didn't crack it because I think he wanted to blow him out. But yep, that is Matt taking game number 1 over John. Grixis Delver over Mono Black Painter. So here we are, game number 2. Matt up 1 game with Grixis Delver over John on Mono Black Painter. So John is going to be on the play here. John going to start off with Urza's Saga. Brave in the face of a Wasteland deck. Matt going to draw for his turn. Down comes Polluted Delta. And Matt going to evoke his own grief here, exiling Dismembered. There's a Snuff Out. And here we see Painter's Servant. So John holding Nile Spellbomb, Painter's Servant, Snuff Out, Orcish Bowmaster, Dark Ritual, and another Ancient Tomb. So I hope you can find a Troll of Khazad-dûm or just a regular Swamp. Because if Matt does have follow-up Wastelands, this could be a pretty hard game for John to navigate. Seeing as how he has 0 black mana for Dark Ritual and Orcish Bowmaster, he can't even draw an additional card off of the Nile Spellbomb. But this hand is not bad against, or if you can go and get Grindstone Painter Servant and kind of set it up that way. Honestly, I would have probably tried to lead Ancient Tomb into Painter Servant first just to see if Matt would respond. Although that would leave you a little bit more vulnerable. Both to Wasteland, and we see that Matt had Dismember already. Alright, so Matt gonna take Snuff Out. I think he knows that's John's like only way to deal with a Murktide Regent. So Matt holding another Grief in hand, chooses just to pass the turn. Urza Saga gonna tick up after John draws a Trinisphere for turn. So it might be problematic if he plays a Trinisphere because he doesn't have a 3rd source of mana yet. So John gonna try to cast a Trinisphere. Looks like it is gonna resolve. Matt going to crack a fetch during John's end step. Alright, so Matt finds a Volcanic Island. Going to cycle Troll of Khazad-dûm, ensuring a 2nd land drop. Finds an Underground Sea, so not worried about any Wastelands here. Sees that John is an Urza Saga Ancient Tomb deck, so very rare for any deck to be playing those 2 lands while also playing a Wasteland. So pretty safe to search for your non-basics here. Matt gonna untap and draw for his turn. Plays Prismatic Vista and passes the turn. So John gonna draw and lose an Urza Saga. Looks like he's just gonna float 1 mana, not gonna make a construct here. Finds Grindstone. So the question is, does he go for Painter? John gonna use the Ancient Tomb, go down to 16. Casts Painter Servant. Matt going to crack the Prismatic Vista. Finds a Swamp. He has to have some way of dealing with this Painter Servant like pretty easily, right? There's no way you would take the Snuff Out and not have a plan to deal with the Painter Servant. Although he might not have been planning to play around a Trinisphere at that point. It does not really matter though, because now Matt has 3 mana and can pay for any kind of removal that he needs to play. All right, there's a Fatal Push on Painter Servant. John gonna draw a card. Does he find a source of mana? Does not. Passes a turn, locking himself out underneath his own Trinisphere. Matt does have enough mana to be playing a Murktide Regent, although won't be as big as we think, as I think there's only one non-land, non-creature. There's a Reanimate. Target Troll of Khazad-dûm. That's a big threat coming down for Matt. Matt gonna go down to 12, losing 6 life off of the Reanimate. And presumably just gonna pass the turn. John just gonna draw. Does he find a source of mana yet? It is not. It looks like a Shieldred the Apocalypse was drawn off the top of the deck. John just gonna ship it back to Matt. Matt gonna draw for his turn. Looks like that's a Wasteland for him. Matt gonna go straight into the combat, swinging 6 at John, bringing him down to 10. So that is Matt at 12, John at 10. This is a 2-turn clock now. Wasteland targeting the Ancient Tomb. Gonna punish him for not playing lands for the last 2 turns. Matt going to tap for 3 mana. There's a Murktide Regent. So still has to pay 3 mana just because of the Trinisphere. There's a Swamp that might be a few turns too late. Matt gonna draw for his turn, swing in for 9, 5, 11. Swings for 11 and takes it over John. So that is Grixis Delver beating Mono Black Painter. We'll see you next time.